The United States has just sent out an aircraft carrier to South Korea as Russia plans to arm North Korea. Now, the Kremlin hasn't been happy with how involved our country has been with their war with the Ukraine, with hundreds of US dollars, hundreds of billions of US dollars, I should say, being sent over there in funding and weapons. It's very clear that we're backing Zelensky. And Russia, well, they're coming out and they're saying that they have allies too. So allies that they're planning to give nuclear weapons. Wow. Now, this is an extremely dangerous game to play. One that's happening right before a huge election right here at home here in the United States, which has many people wondering if this is all a part of the plan. Now, we recently sent a nuclear powered carrier to South Korea to show that we're here for our allies. Although the same could be said for Russia, North Korea, and even China. In fact, Vladimir Putin recently visited Pyongyang in what seemed to be a strengthening of their bond. One thing that many people believe Putin has in common with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is his lack of love for the United States, with both leaders seemingly tired of Western hegemony. Now, this has a lot of experts predicting that it's only a matter of time until targets actually start appearing here in our country, with some calling these threats as an inevitability.
The arrival of the USS Theodore Roosevelt in South Korea, the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier reaching port just days after Russian President Putin's warning about arming North Korea. ABC's Britt Clennett is in Hong Kong with more on this. Good morning, Britt.
Good morning, Rhiannon. Yeah, the USS Roosevelt arrived in Busan for pre-planned drills with South Korea and Japan. The countries really appearing to ramp up military training in the face of growing threats from North Korea. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin meeting Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang, agreeing that they would help each other out in the event of aggression. Now, the Roosevelt's scheduled stop in Busan comes 7 months after a similar port call by another U.S. carrier. The American military exercises with South Korea and Japan called Freedom Edge. Now, they've been long in the making, but this is really another marker of the growing cooperation between these countries. Seoul and Tokyo increasingly willing to put their differences aside to counter threats in the region, including an assertive China and North Korea's growing military arsenal. South Korea's military said the arrival of the Roosevelt, it demonstrates the strong defense posture of these allies and a stern willingness to respond to advancing threats from North Korea.
Ex-NATO Commander James Stavridis, he said that the talks between Russia and North Korea is deeply concerning, especially when you take into consideration that they're talking about nuclear weapons. So yes, it is deeply concerning to say the least. He also opened up the possibility of attacks being pinned right here in America. Now, the worry is that Russia would provide them with the technology to use 50 to 70 nuclear weapons. The same can be said for the intelligence that Russia can provide, which includes targeting. Now, just imagine if Russia gave them the ability to access technology and weapons that could penetrate our defenses. That is some scary stuff, guys. Now, while you might think that this is kind of impossible, you'd have to admit that we're in a very vulnerable position right now. I mean, we have seen alleged threats of domestic terrorism right here in the past few years. We've seen blackouts, we've seen hackers getting into our computer and IT systems with very little to no trouble. I mean, they've even gotten access to our critical infrastructure, which makes you wonder just how secure we actually are if an adversary like Russia or maybe North Korea decides to attack us. And this is exactly what this former NATO commander is saying right now. Now, it's also pretty alarming to know that Russia is leading the world in inventory when it comes to nuclear warheads. And as far as we know, they hold almost 6,000 nuclear warheads, which is almost 1,000 more compared to us. China is third with around 400 to 500 of these weapons in stock. To date, it's reported that the United States and Russia hold almost 90% of the combined 12,500 nuclear warheads in the world. Now, we also cannot gloss over the fact that Russia is attempting to launch a nuclear anti-satellite missile off into space. Now, House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner says that this is all happening while the Biden administration is too worried about getting reelected. Now, the fear is that this weapon can be used to wipe out basically everything from GPS to cell phone services, 5G internet, the typical landline internet, which many of us rely on a daily basis. This could be catastrophic. This could be like a technological Armageddon, so to speak. Blackout, grid down situation. If you're not prepared, you will be SOL. Now, Turner also says that the launch of this weapon, it could also be referred to as Day Zero, which is a term that was coined by Space Force Chief of Staff General B. Chance Stoltzman. He called it Day Zero as it's predicted to have a massive impact on both civilian and military life. In fact, the idea is that this could be used to disable missiles from space, which includes defense missiles that we might have in the event that we face a nuclear threat. And it's not like the Biden administration was not aware about this, right? They were aware of this and they're pretty much ignoring it. They're downplaying it. They admitted earlier this year that they knew Russia was doing this. They've known it for years. So what could happen with this kind of threat? Well, if they can disable our defenses and our missiles, then it's plausible that Russia can then send waves of nuclear weapons to the United States. And with us not being equipped to defend ourselves, we'd pretty much that would be the end of civilization as we know it here in the United States. That would be horrible, to say the least. Now, while we can say that it's plausible, the bigger question is, will they do it? Now, at this point, Russia has confirmed that they are open to talking to the United States, but this conversation must cover all dimensions. This includes the conflict that they're facing with Ukraine. The United States, though, said that any negotiations over the war should be handled by Ukraine. However, it might help if the White House intervened and kind of asked for peace, as things are escalating to a whole nother level. Russia has just signed a mutual defense agreement with Kim Jong-un that would allow them to arm North Korea in response to our country arming Ukraine, which now brings me to the most alarming part of this entire report here today, guys. Russia has confirmed that they are considering changes to their nuclear doctrine. Vladimir Putin says that it is possible that they lower the threshold for their use of nuclear weapons. And this is in response to the developments that we've seen with the West and our alleged provocative statements with regard to an all-out conflict with them. And as we all know, they haven't been shy with threatening both Ukraine and the United States with nuclear weapons. And even though we haven't seen any of these threats escalate to a point of no return, thank God, it's still possible that this could change, especially with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg announcing that the alliance is discussing putting more nuclear weapons on standby. But it does not mean that we now hold the upper hand, as both Russia and China combined have more nuclear warheads and weapons compared to the entirety of NATO. At least that's Biden in charge. Many critics argue that he's a warmonger and that he's not going to try and end this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which has a lot of analysts saying that it would be best to have Donald Trump in the White House, as he's been very vocal about encouraging peace and ending these wars overseas. Now, if it was up to you guys, who would you prefer to lead us through these many different problems that we're facing? President Joe Biden or former President Donald Trump? Now, this kind of reminds me of Trump's Supreme Court win and how MSNBC confirmed it recently on one of their shows. Now, that's not good news for the Biden campaign, as we are just a few months away from the 2024 presidential election. Now, I did a previous video that covered this, so make sure you guys check that one out right now. I'll leave a link for that video down in the description down below this video. But before I go, I just want to thank y'all for your time. Thanks for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing and sharing this video, and I'll see y'all on the next one.